You're listening to the Roundup Podcast, a podcast on reaching the college campus, developing leaders, and sending out kingdom multipliers. This podcast is created by the Southern Baptists of Texas Convention and provided through cooperative program giving.
Well, howdy, friends, and welcome to the Roundup Podcast. I am your host, Mitch Tidwell, and I'm excited to be on today. In fact, this is our first podcast without my co-host Kylie, and so I almost reverted to saying to my co-host Kylie. But I'm excited about the podcast today because we have Cimber Cummings on with us today, who is the college ministry director at Grace Community Church in Tyler. How are you doing, Cimber?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm doing very well. And did I get your title right? I just realized as I was saying that.
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome.
Yeah, college director is great.
Awesome. Well, hey, tell us, so I got a call from Andy Abramson or a text message. He's like, hey, you need to contact Cimber. She's awesome. I talked to her for a long time. He said, I really think you ought to have a conversation with her. And so you and I had a phone call the other day, was really impressed by everything you're doing and kind of your story. So why don't you fill our listeners in, just, a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from and how you got to Tyler, Texas.
Sure. I'd love to. Well, shout out to Andy. I'm thankful that he connected to, us to each other. Grateful for that. But also kudos on getting my name right. Cimber is a weird name because it's spelled with C, and so people always think that it's Cimber. But it's funny, since living in Texas, when I introduce myself to people, they're like, oh, like the gun. Cimber, like the gun. I'm like, yeah, kind of.
Hey, if it works.
If it works. So I've never experienced that before moving to Texas.
Hey, I guess you can say that now, though. You just say Cimber, like the gun. And that's how you can start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Cimber, like the gun. And people are like, okay, I'm tracking.
Yeah.
So, Texas has changed me in that way. But I'm not a Texas native. I grew up in Athens, Georgia. Lived there all my life, where the University of Georgia is. So I grew up in a college town, which was super fun. And lived there, until I was 18. And my parents were involved in ministry, doing private Christian education. And they were teachers and coaches, which was so much fun. And I went to school, undergrad and grad school at Liberty University in Central Virginia, and was there for quite a few years. After I graduated, I was working in what we call the Office of Student Leadership. It's basically residence life. Mm-hmm. And was there for a couple of years and really loved it. Did have a great experience of going to school there. There's interesting things happening there now, but we won't get into that. But I had a great time. And towards the end of my time there, I just sensed the Lord moving and stirring, but I had zero idea, what he was going to call me into next. And I had a desire to kind of move out of higher education. And for some reason, the Lord brought Waco to my mind. So I just had this grand vision of moving to Waco and becoming best friends with Chip and Joanna Gaines and working at Magnolia, every Southern girl's dream.
Yeah.
And I'm still waiting on that to happen. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm hopeful.
Hey, the TV show's coming back. So that's what I hear.
No, oh my gosh. I'm literally so excited about that. And so I honestly started applying for jobs at Magnolia in Waco. And, my resume is not built for that. So I did not hear anything back, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, I could probably work at Baylor and that'll be fine. And so in my process of trying to move to Waco, I reached out to a former boss of mine who was living in Tyler. And he was like, are you trying to move to Texas? And I was like, I think so. I'm not really sure. And he told me about the position that I have now at Grace Community Church. And I was very hesitant. I was like, I love the Lord and I love ministry, but I don't think I have a desire to work at a church. But he convinced me to come out to visit. And I just, left that weekend knowing that it was the next step for me and the Lord had opened a door. And so I came in working both with women's ministry and college ministry.
Okay.
But at the time I had kind of like a male counterpart that we were splitting the role of college director, but then the Lord called him to Memphis. And so I transitioned into kind of dropping the women's ministry role and taking over the role of college director. And I've been doing that full time for about a year and a half, and have been at Grace Community Church for about 3.5 years now. And really love it. Super grateful, learning things all the time. And yeah, just super grateful to be here.
You know, it's kind of to hear you say, here's someone from Georgia that was longing to come to Waco. For a Texan to hear that, you know, when you got to have like a little bit of history here, which I'm sure you probably already caught up, but you know, like David Koresh and all that stuff. Like Waco was for the most part like the weirdest place in Texas. Like it just had this kind of stain on it from that, and it's only been I guess maybe the last 10 to 15 years with RG3 and Magnolia, that now it's like become this like hotspot. So it's so funny to be a Texan hearing people like, hey, I'm moving to come to Waco, which, hey, no hate on Waco. I love Waco, but it's definitely, which it makes the commutes down 35 so much better now that you, from DFW to Austin, you're like, hey, halfway through, we have a destination spot.
We'll go to Waco.
Yeah.
So. We'll get some cupcakes at Magnolia.
That's right.
I will say the first time I ever drove to Waco, literally the first week I moved to Texas, I went to Magnolia. It was like I was going to Disney World. Yeah. But on the drive there, I was thinking, wait, is this it? Like, where are we going?
Yeah, it's kind of like you go from DFW, then you get to West, you get your kolaches there, then you keep going, you hit Waco, you have your Magnolia, then it's just awesome from there. So oh, that's good stuff. You know, I actually heard, this total side topic, but I actually heard Waco was supposed to be the capital of Texas at one point until...
Really?
I think I had someone tell me that. I have no idea if that's true. So we'll probably just leave that there because it may not be true. So, well, that's great.
It's the tourist capital now.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Well, so you did college ministry. So while you were at Liberty University, you were in residence life. You were leading there, and kind of what was your role? Just were you an RA, or were you doing? Was it more than that? How did that work out?
Right. Well, when I was in undergrad, I was an RA, and the cool thing about Liberty was that our residence life structure kind of doubled as a discipleship structure. Which I loved. So it's like, as a resident assistant, I got to lead a group of girls and meet with them regularly, pour into them regularly. And it also was a scholarship position, which I was so grateful for. Oh, nice. And then after doing that in undergrad, I transitioned to becoming a resident director. So I kind of oversaw a couple buildings on campus and got to do the same thing, like disciple RAs and pour into a group of people. And then in my last couple of years there, I transitioned again to where I was kind of overseeing the resident directors on campus. And but it always involved discipleship to a high degree. And I'll always be very thankful for that experience and met so many incredible people. But yeah, so it was this cool mixture of discipleship, but also like just helping manage things, the crazy things that happen on a college dorm. The stories are incredible. So you never know from day to day what you're going to see and hear.
Man, my wife was a RA at UNT, University of North Texas, and she still speaks about that just very often, of what just an impactful time that was. Actually live with people, disciple, like just was such a special time. Yeah. Hey, Cimber, tell us a little bit about like who have been like the primary like disciple makers in your life. Like, you're the people that have kind of informed and shaped you to who you are today.
Yeah, great question. I think that like prior to going to college, those people, I mean, I had two incredible older sisters and I had great coaches that always poured into me, but it was cool going to college. For the first time, I felt like I was intentionally one-on-one discipled. There's a girl named Lori who was my resident director who poured into me for 2 years, and just other incredible women like her who did that, you know, other women within our office. And it was even cool too, because I felt like at the time when I was post-college, you know, that time between like 23 and 26 where you're working a job for the first time, I had incredible coworkers who were peers who I felt like were also pouring into me. And so, yeah, I just feel like I'm so grateful now to be working with college students, because that was when disciple making became a real thing for me in my life. And I saw how important it was and how vital it is and how unique it is. And it's what Christ is always calling us into, I believe, no matter where we are. But in school, for me, that really came to life. So I'm grateful.
Gotcha. Well, so you come into Grace Community Church. By the way, is this your first church position you've held?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
First church position.
So you've done disciple making, you've kind of led, but within the university setting. So now you're in local church. Tell us a little bit about your journey there at Grace Community. I know it sounded like you had kind of a dual role at first. Now you're kind of focused on college, and what was all that like, and what's your ministry like now?
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful because I feel like a lot of my former experiences have transitioned to, into this position really flawlessly. But at the same time, like a church context is unique. And, I came in not doing college ministry full time, but now having transitioned into doing that full time, I'm so grateful for just what the Lord is continuing to teach me. And even though Liberty was a Christian university and now I'm working at a church, my experiences both there and here have been so unique. And we've seen a lot of change happen in our college ministry the past couple of years. When I came in, it was very programmatic. And our big thing every week was our weekly gathering, and we would meet with students on Tuesday nights and have worship and prayer and communion. And that was honestly a good thing. It was a good thing. But we questioned over time whether it was the best thing. And so the guy that I was leading with at the time, his name is Dakota. He's a dear friend of mine. We just kind of felt like if for some reason you and I did not exist tomorrow, our college ministry would also not exist because it's so leader centric. And so we wanted to transition it into being student centric and having student leaders who are leading their peers, pouring into their peers. And if for some reason I were to be gone tomorrow, I know that this ministry would continue because we have leaders that we're training to come alongside their peers. And so now we focus our time and energy on selecting, equipping, coming alongside a group of leaders who are leading smaller groups of students throughout the week. And we've seen the Lord really use that and bless that. And it's the coolest thing in the world when I hear one of my student leaders say I shared the gospel with my roommate this week and she accepted Christ. It just is so amazing. And so that was a good change for us. And so we're trying to get better and better at doing that.
How has that impacted the students to make that transition from, maybe being, I don't know if this is the most flawless way to put it, but maybe being event-centric to being more, or maybe not event, just where everything rests on the leader's shoulders versus, hey, we're going to equip the saints for the work of the ministry? How is that fleshed out with the students? Has it been good? Have you guys had a hard time? How's that worked out?
Yeah, it honestly has been a little bit easier than I thought it would have been, which I'm kind of grateful for. Yeah. And I think that, we had a group of, I think at the time, pretty enthusiastic people that we knew we could call upon. Hey, I see leadership potential in you. You're already serving this community. What do you think about doing that more? And so it definitely, we had to transition people's mindsets a little bit more into where's the thing for college students? Where's our thing every week, And so we had to get over that hurdle. But once we were kind of able to say hey, listen, we're going to help you do this. We're not going to just say, hey, take a group of 10 students and good luck out there. We're trying to come alongside them. And once they realize that they're not leading alone, it's been good. So yeah, it honestly, and it's not like we've had a tradition of having a huge weekly gathering for years and years and years. So we didn't have to, it wasn't a major hurdle for us, as it maybe would have been for other people. But people have been excited. I think our students are okay, I get to really be a active part of what God is doing. And that excites them. And every year, it's always funny to me because, I can pinpoint people so easily, like, hey, God's at work in you. I know you already love your community. You're serving them. What do you think about being a leader? And they're always so hesitant and they usually don't see that potential within themselves. Mm-hmm. But it's cool seeing them grow and learn in that. And they leave, this ministry, I think, knowing themselves so much better. And, they're going to step into a community or a new church or a new job, like knowing how to invest in people and knowing how to engage people and knowing how to invite people into their homes. And that gets me so excited because I'm like, that's the work of discipleship, and it's going to last so much longer than your 2 years in a college ministry,
Oh, totally. So you said, did you say a few years or 2 years?
I said 2, but it's anywhere from, 2 to 4.
Well, that's why I was asking.
If I can get it for,
yeah. I didn't, because you guys are so I know it's the University of Texas at Tyler, correct?
Yes.
And then,
correct.
which is 4-year, but then do you have a lot of 2-year students?
Yeah. Yeah, we do. We have a large junior college in Tyler too. It's called Tyler Junior College. So many people go there for a couple years and they'll transition to a bigger school, or sometimes they'll transition to UT Tyler.
Yeah.
But it's rare sometimes that we can actually get a student for 4 years. Yeah. So if I meet a freshman that's like going to be here, I'm like, oh, praise God. We're going to get some longevity out of you.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. I know we had the church that I'm at, we had a student that was with us for a year, and then last year just kind of disappeared. And then I saw him Sunday at church, and it's like, oh man, glad to have you back. Thought we lost you. I'm glad
yeah.
So, yeah, to have all 4 years is pretty special, and is always a lot of fun. My wife disciples a group of some of our senior ladies in our ministry, and just getting to hang with them for several years has really been really beautiful. Just to get to watch and see them grow, and it's been tons of fun. So,
that's awesome. I love that.
So, what's been just in your minute. By the way, I want to ask you this: is there a difference between now? I know you weren't in a church ministry setting when you were in Virginia, but what has been different about college ministry in Texas versus where you came from?
Yeah, that's a great question.
And I didn't prepare you for that, so
that's okay. That's okay. I have an answer. Yeah, it definitely has been different. Like it's funny. Like I can't believe it, but this is my 10th year doing college ministry, which is crazy to me. And the themes of college and that time of life are probably always going to be similar. It's a time of discovery. People are figuring themselves out. They're on their own for the first time, and there's unique freedoms and frustrations that come along with that. And that has been the same no matter where I've been. What has been so interesting to me in East Texas is that we encounter a lot of students who grew up in the church, whose families have been involved in the same church for years and years and years. They have this quote unquote tradition of Christianity, but it ends there, And so we have to, it's so interesting. You encounter a lot of people who are doing okay. It's like, we're okay. We have great jobs and we have a good house and we go to our church and we're doing okay, and so helping students, I think, just learn okay, yes, but faith is not what you do on a Sunday morning. And it's not even just your experience in our small group. Christ wants to be the Lord of your life, and he wants to not only inform your experience on a Sunday morning, but he wants to inform the way that you study and the way that you date and the way that you approach your friendships and the way that you approach, your future. And so it's just been interesting encountering a lot of students who even think they know Christ or have a relationship with Christ. But in all honesty, they don't. And that's so exciting too, just to see sometimes them make that change. Oh my gosh, I thought I knew God, but I don't actually have a relationship with him. And I actually haven't surrendered my life to him. And so that just, to me, is a unique piece about East Texas and where we are. So.
Yeah, that is a common thread that, at least, I know through the South, definitely here in Texas.
Right.
Well, the next question I
Mhm.
had for you was, and maybe that was it, but is, what's been, when it comes to ministering to college students, what's been one of the biggest kind of challenges that you've come across?
Yeah, again, I would like reiterate like them just like compartmentalizing their faith
Hmm.
and, helping them grow and learn in Christ, informing all of what they do and transforming all of what they do.
Hmm.
Also, I think it was funny in my context of being at Liberty, I was working with students who were kind of under contract with us, which sounds weird, but they were like, we were supporting them financially. So I didn't have a hard time telling them what to do and holding them accountable
Hmm.
to things. And so it's interesting, working strictly with volunteer leaders and, students who were not supporting financially. That's always such an interesting experience of like how to call out the best in them and hold them to a high standard, and also realizing that they're volunteers, and
Hmm.
that they're playing sports and they're in school and they have so much going on. So I'm trying to kind of manage my expectations in that a little bit. But
Yeah.
so that's a unique challenge often.
I feel like Christian ministry, especially in local church setting, is really one of the best tests for leadership, because literally, I mean, as far as working with people who are not on staff of a church, like you're leading a group of volunteers and having to get them bought in, and you're like, no one's
Hmm.
getting paid, so it's not like an obligation
Right.
kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's like the ultimate test of leadership. Like, can I motivate and empower people to lead when they don't have to? Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
well, what's been
It is unique.
yeah, it
Mhm.
is. So what's been your biggest maybe encouragement with college students, the biggest bright spot, the biggest place of optimism that you see with the students you work with?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really cool. Again, coming from my former experience of being in a university setting where I encountered, 25 students a day who were just on fire for God. Like they knew who they were, they knew what they wanted to do with their life. They were going hard after God, and my discipleship experience was really rich there. And I just kind of thought it's never going to be as rich as it was in that one space. I kind of had that expectation.
Mm.
And then coming to Texas, the Lord has just humbled me in that and proven that to be so untrue. And it's even, in a sense, richer because, like, most of the students I encounter, I mean, obviously, like, they're not at private Christian universities. And faith is not an expectation for them in a sense because they're not in Bible classes. They don't have chapel every week. It just is totally their decision. And so to see students who still are saying, I want to serve the Lord, I want to serve my local church, I want my friends and classmates and teammates to know Christ, has been, I just love that. It always kind of blows my mind
Mm.
to see them want to be a part of that. And it encourages me. And, they just are in such a fun season where they're not afraid, usually to say yes and take risks and go and serve and do. And I love that. I love the energy that comes along,
Mm.
with this ministry.
What has been like the best, most like helpful book you've read to, and like that's helped you in college ministry or maybe even ministry in general?
Oh, yeah, that's good. I would say, I don't know if I could tailor it to quote unquote college ministry,
Uh-huh.
but whenever people ask me that question just about life in general, my walk with Christ in general, I always encourage The Cost of Discipleship, Bonhoeffer's The Cost of Discipleship.
Uh-huh.
I just love that. I think it's timeless. And I love Richard Foster's Celebration of Discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, spiritual disciplines are just something that seem to become less and less familiar sometimes with our experience, our day-to-day experience. And so I love encouraging people with that, just like knowing like, your experience with God can be so vast, and there's lots of different ways that we get to connect with him and learn about him and know him. So those two books have just been pretty powerful in my life, and I encourage other people to read them pretty consistently.
Have you found with college students that sometimes, like when it comes to the spiritual disciplines, that it's kind of the pendulum swings pretty far? Either it's pretty loose or it's probably like pretty rigid, like there's kind of extremes with it. And how have you helped, like, is that something you found? And then also, like, what are some ways that you're helping college students in those kind of spiritual disciplines? Because I feel like that's something that's kind of all over the map as I talk to college ministers from around the state.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because you're right. It's like, and even for me, like I'm rereading Celebration Discipline right now, and I'm like, gosh, there's so much good stuff in here, but I feel like I just need a whole month just to be thinking about the concept of prayer or the concept of fasting. And if I move on too fast, I feel like I haven't learned anything. But at the same time, I think it's okay. I'm trying to learn to encourage students, like it's okay to experiment and it's okay to get it wrong. I think the important part is that you're trying and that you want to engage with God. He loves that. Like he loves that you want to engage with him and get to know him in a new way. So don't worry about getting it right or wrong. Like just try it, just experiment with it. Just give meditation a go one morning and see what you learn from it. If you've never experienced fasting before, like commit a meal to doing that, So I think just encouraging them, and even myself, like, I'm not going to get all of these things. I'm not going to be a master of all of these things, but let's not keep us from trying and digging into the messiness of it a little bit.
I think you mentioned something really good where you said just, I think you used the word just experimenting. And I think that's something that probably needs, because I just think about my own personal journey over the last, January will be 11 years I've been a believer. And actually, no, it's been, wow, no. Yeah, no, it's 11 years or 12. I don't know. I can't think right now. But
it's up there. It's up there.
I've been like thinking, like, I think every few years there's almost like this. I feel like the Lord just kind of stirs me in my disciplines and they look a little bit different. Like even now that in the last 3 years I've gotten married and I've had a child. And so that radically changes your mornings and your routine. So
yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Totally. It's like I've had to figure out, okay, I still need to spend time with the Lord. And I almost have to put to death my old kind of regimen or my old kind of routine because it's not coming back. It simply can't because there's other responsibilities that I have now. And so having to figure that out again. And, recently got to a really sweet spot where I'm like, feel like I have a pretty good rhythm now because I do love routine. I thrive off routine. So it's helpful for me to get that, back. So now I, read in the mornings and then I go on a prayer walk and sometimes that includes me or includes my dog or my dog and my son. And so you're balancing all that together, but it's funny how the Lord in his grace meets us there. So I think that I don't know that when you said, I think experimenting with that is a really great idea of like figuring out what's kind of your rhythm and how you spend time with the Lord and how you hear from him. And obviously the word and prayer are foundational, but how those are expressed, I think can change. So it's good stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. I encourage people often, especially our students, I'm like, your relationship with God is still a relationship and relationships are dynamic. And there's different things you do to connect with the people in your life. And there's different things we can be a part of to connect with God. And don't limit yourself to what that can be. And so I love that our relationship with the Lord gets to be dynamic in that. And that even in seasons of our life, like you were saying, that will change. And so I think we just get to learn more and more aspects of God's character in and through that. And there's always, I think, going to be certain aspects that maybe we connect with more or feel more comfortable with, or, like fasting is a huge discipline for me. And I just have seen and met the Lord in that spiritual discipline in particular, more so than others. But it's just because I tried it one time and I was like, oh, wow. Like there's certain things I didn't know about God until this experience.
Oh, absolutely. That's great. That is good stuff. Well, Cimber, I want to ask you another question here. What is it? We talked a little bit before we got on the call here, and you are a woman who is a woman in a role that is predominantly a male role, and two, a single woman in that role. And so, what has been your experience like in that, and what has kind of the Lord kind of taught you in and through all that?
Yes, great question. He's teaching me new things all the time because of that. And, I'm grateful that I think I had a family. My parents kind of always would think, they never put limits on us, as their kids to like what we could do and who we could be. They just always were encouraging us. And so I think leadership for me always happened more naturally. And when I was in an organizational structure, a few years ago, it's not abnormal for both men and women to be in certain positions. And so I think that encouraged my confidence in knowing that like leadership can look a lot of different ways. What matters is that you care about your people and you want them to feel valued. You want to help them feel seen and known and loved and supported. And I think that coming to this position that I am in Texas, I didn't necessarily come thinking, well, when am I going to get to take over the college ministry? And when am I going to get to be a director? Even though like I knew that was probably in some senses a desire, but the Lord provided that opportunity. And there was a moment to where I thought, am I going to be supportive in this, knowing that a woman has not held this position before? And you're right, it's very unlikely for me to meet a fellow like female college director. But I had confidence and to know that this is the opportunity that God's presented to me. My church staff and leaders have been supportive and will continue to be supportive. And I'm so grateful for that. They give me a lot of freedom to be led by God in this, but they also are super supportive. And so sometimes there are like certain insecurities that come along with that. And I think that most leaders can probably relate to, our egos get in the way all the time. And even I have the tension all the time of even wanting to prove myself and wanting to build an impressive ministry. And sometimes I feel motivated by like, well, even though I'm a woman, a single woman, I can do this too, and watch me do this. And that's completely prideful and wrong, but I still feel that tension. But at the same time, I'm learning that like, no matter who we are, where we are, God calls us so that, he can be glorified through us. And so I'm continually having to lay this position before him and I want to learn and grow. And, there's a unique hardship, just to be honest, about sometimes being single in ministry. There's a lot of days where I'm like, Lord, I wish I had, a partner to talk through this struggle or to get feedback on this. And so there's a certain loneliness that comes along with that I don't always prefer. But at the same time, the Lord provides like companionship in other ways, and he has provided me good counsel. And I feel like I'm trying to learn to lean on him in a unique way, like being a single woman in this ministry. But it's been cool too. I'm learning so much and have great people around me who are super supportive, and that has made all the difference too.
Oh man, I bet so. I was really, from when I had gotten saved to when Olivia and I had gotten married, it was about 7 years. So for a lot of that was single, but even in that, I lived in my hometown, family all around. And so I just, part of me is trying to put myself in your shoes, moving, halfway across the United States. But obviously it sounds like you found a sweet family or a sweet church family that you've gotten some good companionship there. So that's awesome. Another question I have for you is how have men kind of played a role in your life in as far as a woman, a leader in ministry? And I hate to keep bringing this up, but it is, it is, at least in more conservative evangelical worlds, it is very male driven. And so how have men stepped kind of into your life and be an encouragement and a blessing to you as a ministry leader?
Yeah. I'm really grateful for the friend of mine who, when I came into this college ministry, we were kind of sharing the responsibilities. His name is Dakota, and he's a dear friend. And so he always was just not only supportive, but like lifting me up, saying like, Cimber, you can do this. I trust you. What's your call? And it's always an encouragement to me when the men that I work with, like, understand that, like, all of our experience is probably going to be richer and better informed when we have both men and women around the table. But yeah, I have some both incredible female leaders and male leaders around me, but it does feel particularly good and encouraging as a woman in ministry when I have a man who's maybe even an authority figure in my life, like, welcome me at the table and give me a seat at the table and, encourage my input and express gratitude. Like I just am always, that lifts my spirits so much. And also just the fact that so many of them are always saying like, hey, we trust you. Like, we trust you to do this. And I'm like, okay, yes, thank you for your trust. I'm going to do the best that I can, and seek the Lord. But yeah, so it does mean so much. And that's, I think our experience in leadership anywhere, when someone who's quote unquote above you, whatever that means, they're in a position of authority in your life, whenever that person takes the time to say, hey, you're doing a good job. Like, thank you for what you're doing. This matters. This is what you're contributing. That is so life-giving. And so I even have to constantly remind myself, like, I get to do that for both my male and female college leaders, like, hey, this is how I see God at work in you. These are the gifts that he's given you. I'm so grateful for you. Keep it up. Like it just is like breath in our lungs, and we need it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. One of the things that, over the last couple of years I've found myself thinking about more and trying to kind of make a difference in is just the conviction over how much, especially for young people, there's kind of almost a segregation between male and females in really more conservative, evangelical environments. And there's been really, I feel like more resources have been poured into male discipleship versus female discipleship, and kind of almost really kind of lagging behind in developing like female leaders in the local church. And I think some of that is just based out of fear, like you don't want, anything bad to happen. But in some ways, I feel like we have to develop healthy environments and healthy relationships where men and women can be an encouragement and can basically disciple one another. And I understand there are going to be certain boundaries, but, I just think for the whole body to thrive, we can't put all of our resources in one demographic. We got to put it in every demographic. And,
absolutely.
So that's
for
really
sure.
cool. Well, Cimber, you mentioned that when we talked on the phone last time that you have a book that you're writing and it's coming out. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I would love to. I am moonlighting as an author right now. So that's where all my evenings, my time in my evenings is going. It pays very little, but it's okay. So praise God, the writing is actually done, and now it's in kind of the production stages, which has been a fun part of the process. But the book is called 20 something, and it's the things that you wish someone had told you about your 20s, from one gal to another. That's the subtitle. So I was inspired to start writing it like a couple years ago. I was 29 and I was turning 30 that year. And for some reason I was freaking out about it. I just was like,
I've been there.
I don't know why.
I've been there.
Yeah. I was just like, Lord, I'm turning 30. I feel like I have nothing to show for it. I need counseling.
30 was like the year that I finally felt like I went from 18 to 30. Like in my 20s, I felt like a kid. Then 30 was like, I'm an adult. Like I really...
You're an adult.
And in fact, I found out that I feel like people actually treated me differently once I hit 30s. Like it's kind of funny.
Yes.
I don't...
Yes.
Maybe it was all in my head, but it felt like that.
No, it's true. No, it's really true. It's really true. But that's the part that scared me. I was like, oh, man, I'm an adult. There's no excuse now,
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So I started writing it right before I turned 30, just to process my time in my 20s. And I felt like the Lord I've never been a journaler. And so for me to take some time to write out my experiences in my 20s and things that the Lord taught me and had brought me through, was just so therapeutic for me. And as I continued to do that and finish that, I just was like, okay, well, what do I do now? And I really just felt led by him to keep taking it further and to pursue publication. And so I did. And so that's where we are now. But, it's written to 20-something women. And my goal is just to remind them of who God is. And I share a lot of personal stories, and I try to make them as relatable and funny as possible. But I just wanted to encourage women, this is who God is when you break up with your boyfriend. And this is who God is when you don't get the job that you wanted. And this is who God is when you move across the country and don't know anyone. And this is who God is on your best day and your darkest day. And so I try to use stories to highlight that, knowing that so many things that happen in our 20s are common to a lot of people's experiences, because it's, identity and discovery and relationships and learning who we are and what we like and don't like. And so, I just wanted to, remind people and women in particular of the goodness of God, and that they're not alone or crazy in their experience, and that truly at the end of the day, that Christ is the constant of our lives, because so many things in our 20s change, and that's good. We should be changing, and our jobs and positions and communities are going to change, but Christ is consistent, and he is near and good and sovereign, and he's the one that we have to cling to. It's called 20-something, and Lord willing, if all goes according to plan, it will be ready in November for purchase.
Oh, nice. So we're, and by the way, I think that's really cool to share your stories. I feel like sometimes if we just, even as, being, if there's young ladies that are single and you kind of feel isolated, like maybe there's something wrong with you. Why am I in this situation?
Right.
You kind of question those circumstances. So just to get someone else's story and realize, oh, hey, I'm not crazy. I'm completely normal, and everybody goes through this. So that's awesome. Well, if somebody wants to grab your book, how would they get it?
Yeah, it'll be available on Amazon. Will be the easiest place to get it. But I'll also make it available on my website, which is just cimbercummings.com. But Amazon. It's called 20-something. Lord willing, we'll be here in a few months. So fingers crossed.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, Cimber, thanks so much for being on today. This was really an enjoyable conversation, and we would definitely love to have you on again and grab a copy of that book when it comes out. So thanks for being on.
Yeah. Hey, thank you guys so much. This was a lot of fun. Thank you all for the work that you're doing. I'm grateful for it. And so really appreciate y'all having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, guys and gals, thanks for jumping on the podcast today. This has been a fun conversation. Don't forget to follow us on social media. It's at SBTC Collegiate. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find our blog and our podcast on our website, sbtexas.com/collegiate. And we even have a Facebook group called Roundup Network. You can jump in there. We have hundreds of leaders from across the state of Texas and even beyond there to idea share, collaborate. It's just a really good time. So check us out, and we'll see you next time.